Welcome to Read This Next with Laura and Nicole. Today we are talking about Latinx paranormal fantasy with a little bit of sci-fi thrown in there for good measure. And unfortunately, we previously filmed this episode and forgot to record it.
Yeah, so this is take 2. It's, obviously going to be way funnier and more entertaining the second time.
Should be.
Yeah, yes, definitely. So lucky you for getting the second version.
Yeah, that was a dress rehearsal, and here we go with round 2.
Yes, definitely. Very good.
All right, well, let's get started. I guess, so all of the authors on here are hashtag own voices. So they're all people who identify as Hispanic or Latinx, and they're all really good. So let's get into it.
Sure. So, of course, we go into paranormal. Where does Laura end up? Horror adjacent.
Yep. As expected.
Yep. As expected, as usual. Yes. Okay. So my first one is a book called 5 Midnights. It's by Anne Davila Cardinal. If Lupe Davila and Javier Utier can survive each other's company together, they can solve a series of grisly murders. Grizzly. Yeah. I always want to say something else, but it's not grizzly bears. The other grizzly murders sweeping through Puerto Rico. Imagine if it was grizzly bear murders in Puerto Rico.
Grizzly bear murders.
My next novel idea. Okay, anyway, but the clues lead them out of the real world and into the realm of myths and legends. And if they want to catch the killer, they'll have to step into the shadows to see what's lurking there. Murderer or monster. And the tagline on the book is monsters only come when they're called.
Oh, I guess if you're summoning them.
Someone is. So someone's summoning. It's a very creepy cover. Monster, real scary looking monster. Kind of looks like a giant clump of wet hair, but also scary.
It kind of looks like a hairy tadpole.
Yeah, which makes it sound not scary at all, but it's really big. So
yeah, if that's presumably that's the city they're in below him, so it's like Godzilla size. Yes. Probably bigger.
Yeah, it's a big monster. Anyway, so that's the first one, and I feel like I'm pretty sure there's a sequel to that one as well.
Okay, cool. And the next one in the same vein as Monsters is called All These Monsters by Amy Tintera. 17-year-old Clara is ready to fight back against her abusive father, fight back against the only life she's ever known, and most of all, fight back against Scrabs, the earth-dwelling monsters that are currently ravaging the world. So when an opportunity arises for Clara to join an international monster fighting squad, she jumps at the chance. When Clara starts training with her teammates, however, she realizes that what fighting monsters really means. Sore muscles, exhaustion, and worst of all, death.
Yeah. What a downside.
Everything has one. Scrabs are unpredictable, violent, and terrifying, but as Clara gains confidence in her battle skills, she starts to realize Scrabs might not be the biggest evil. The true monsters are the ones you least expect. Dun, dun, dun.
Could it be the humans?
The very second line says fight against her abusive father, so it sounds like she's already realized that humans can be monsters.
Be monsters.
Yeah, the cover, I don't like the tongue.
Is that what it is?
I think it's a tongue.
Okay, I leaned forward towards the screen earlier because I was trying to figure out what it was, and then I was like, I should not zoom into my camera like that unexpectedly. It's a little disconcerting. Anyway, that's a tongue? That's yucky.
I think it is because that's I think the words are scales. And then presumably that's a reptilian tongue, which is gross.
Honestly, my other guess was like a ponytail, which seemed unlikely, but I didn't know what else it was going to be. You have to look at this cover if you're listening to this.
Yeah, we'll show it again.
Yes. If you're listening on the podcast, though, search for Amy Tintera, All These Monsters, and you can see it's an unusual cover. There's something going on there that I am not sure about. Book one in a series. And she's written a bunch of other stuff as well. Like I think pretty much all of her stuff is kind of like thriller, suspensey, science fiction. So if you enjoy, she's got a nice little backlist you can dig into.
Love it.
Okay. Love it. Next one is called The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring. Simmering in Patagonian myth. Fun word. The 10th Girl is a gothic psychological thriller with a haunting twist.
Right up your alley.
It is up my alley. It's true. At the very southern tip of South America looms an isolated finishing school. Legend has it that the land will curse those who settle there. But for Mavi, a bold Buenos Aires native fleeing the military regime that took her mother, it offers an escape to a new life as a young teacher to Argentina's elite girls. Boy, what could be more fun than teaching a bunch of teenagers in an isolated environment?
Sounds thrilling.
Sounds like a really good time. Mavi tries to embrace the strangeness of the imposing house, despite warnings not to roam at night, threats from an enigmatic young man, and rumors of mysterious capital O others. But one of Mavi's 10 students is missing, and when students and teachers alike begin to behave as if possessed, the forces haunting this unholy cliff will no longer be ignored. One of these spirits holds a secret that could unravel Mavi's existence. In order to survive, she must solve a cosmic mystery and then fight for her life.
I would simply leave, but that's not much of a story.
No. And also, it's funny because I feel like the force of someone being missing could really propel a lot of the mystery, but it's that final line is just like, she's got to solve a cosmic mystery. Maybe the girl disappearing is part of a cosmic mystery.
It could be. That's something we talked about in our previous recording of this, was that a lot of the books that are in here are like, they're based on specific regions' folklore or mythology. So a lot of them in this list are either like fantasy based on mythology or folklore or kind of religion, it's really interesting. So I'm curious. With my rec, I really liked reading and learning more about like how the mythology plays in. So this one would be really cool with a cosmic mystery.
Cosmic mystery. Okay, next one.
Yeah, this next one is Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. We had a few others of his on the list. Cannot recall what they are now. What if it's us?
They both die at the end.
He has a whole bunch, and he's primarily YA. Okay, so this is the description. It's a series, but it's a bit of an older series, so pretty cool. Okay, balancing epic and intensely personal stakes, best-selling author Adam Silvera's Infinity Sun is a gritty, fast-paced adventure about two brothers caught up in the magical war generations in the making. Growing up in New York, brothers Emil and Brighton always idolized the Spellwalkers, a vigilante group sworn to rid the world of specters. While the Spellwalkers and other Celestials are born with powers, specters take them, violently stealing the essence of endangered magical creatures. Not good.
Not good.
Brighton wishes he had a power so he could join the fray. Emil just wants the fighting to stop. The cycle of violence has taken its toll, making it harder for anyone with a power to live peacefully and openly. In this climate of fear, a gang of specters has been growing bolder by the day. Then, in a brawl, after a protest, Emil manifests a power of his own, one that puts him right at the heart of the conflict and sets him up to be the heroic spellwalker Brighton always wanted to be. Brotherhood, love, and loyalty will be put to the test, and no one will escape the fight unscathed.
Isn't that always the way, right? You know, like you really want the power, your brother gets the power.
Yep.
Yeah.
And cool brother dynamic instead of sisters or brother and sister, which is unusual for books, which is cool.
Yeah, not as many of the two boys. I feel like there's like obviously echoes of, you know, superhero stories very clearly. I didn't really notice this last time, but this time when you read it to me, I kind of zeroed in on the magical creatures. Are there dragons in this book? The cover kind of looks like maybe a dragon.
I think the cover it's like there's a symbol of it's like a figure eight for those that aren't watching, and it kind of
Oh, look
reminds.
at his head, though.
I think it's an Ouroboros, which is like a snake eating its own tail, but the face looks like a bird.
Well, maybe I just think birds look like dragons.
Maybe
I don't
it's
know.
a phoenix.
Maybe it's a phoenix. Actually, that would kind of combine the ideas. Maybe
it's a dragon with a bird face. Who knows? Read to find out.
Magical creatures. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it definitely does look like a dragon, though. But
there's
like
something dragon
going
on there.
Yeah, you know how dinosaurs they theorize might have feathers? Why not dragons?
Yes, very much so. Why not dragons? Yeah. Okay. Next one is, oh boy, Lobazona. And this one is available on Cloud Library. It's book 1 in a series, Wolves of No World. It's by Romina Garber. So we've got some statements to begin with. Some people are illegal. Lobazonas do not exist. Both these statements are false.
Why say them then?
Manuela Azul has been crammed into an existence that feels too small for her. As an undocumented immigrant who's on the run from her father's Argentine crime family, rough situation, Manu is confined to a small apartment and a small life in Miami, Florida, until Manu's protective bubble is shattered. Her surrogate grandmother is attacked, lifelong lies are exposed, and her mother is arrested by ICE. That's the American Immigration Force, if you're not familiar with that acronym.
Yeah.
Without a home, without answers, and finally without shackles, Manu investigates the only clue she has about her own past, a mysterious Z emblem, which leads her to a secret world buried within her own, it's within our own world,
Ooh.
A world connected to her dead father and his criminal past, a world straight out of Argentine folklore where the 7th consecutive daughter is born a bruja, and the 7th consecutive son is a lobazon, a werewolf, a world where her unusual eyes allow her to belong. As Manu uncovers her own story and traces her real heritage all the way back to a cursed city in Argentina, she learns it's not just her U.S. residency that's illegal, it's her entire existence.
That one sounds really good. But the thing that threw me off the most was like 7th daughter becomes a bruja, which is like a form of a witch.
Yes.
And the 7th son is a werewolf? That's sad. Poor dude.
That's a kind of a raw deal for that son.
Yeah, you're just like, no, we can't have a son, but maybe we want a 7th daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I think I think it would be an interesting one to read because it starts off sounding like very realistic. You know, like there's definitely other books out there that have similar storylines, right? Where like, you know, there's immigration and they're concerned and and then all of a sudden this is like, but wait, there's more. Open this doorway. Oh my gosh. Magic.
There's a lot more.
There's a lot more going on. Yeah. Yeah. And again, that one's part of a series too.
Yeah, and that one is specifically on Cloud Library. We don't have a paper copy yet, but you can find it on the Cloud Library app, which is where you can get ebooks and audiobooks, in case you didn't know.
Right. Yes. Good for us.
Yeah, trying to define things. Our next one is Gods of Jade and Shadow, which is a adult fiction. It's by Silvia Moreno Garcia, who's also the author of Mexican Gothic, which we talked about before. And the cover is beautiful, but we'll talk about it after the description. Okay. The Mayan god of death sends a young woman on a harrowing, life-changing journey in this one-of-a-kind fairy tale inspired by Mexican folklore. More folklore, which is cool. Yes. Okay. The jazz age is in full swing, but Cassiopeia Tun is too busy cleaning the floors of her wealthy grandfather's house to listen to any fast tunes. Nevertheless, she dreams of a life far from her dusty small town in southern Mexico, a life she can call her own. Yet this new life seems as distant as the stars until one day she finds a curious wooden box in her grandfather's room. She opens it and accidentally frees the spirit of a Mayan god of death. Whoops. Yeah, and I feel like every episode we have one where we're just like, Oops.
I mean, I guess people are that curious, but like, I don't know, at a certain point, if it's a locked drawer or box, just wait till your parent gets home and ask them what it is instead of opening it.
I
Just a
believe.
thought.
I agree. Yeah, so this Mayan death god requests her help in recovering his throne from his treacherous brother. Failure will mean Cassiopeia's demise, but success could make her dreams come true. In the company of the strangely alluring god and armed with her wits, Cassiopeia begins an adventure that will take her on a cross-country odyssey from the jungles of Yucatan to the bright lights of Mexico City and deep into the darkness of the Mayan underworld. Now, sounds vaguely Cinderella-esque, but in the Jazz Age. So the cover, I know you and I talked about it last time. We were like, wow, this is so cool. Look at the colors. It's very Art Deco.
It is.
Why.
That's why. Very Jazz Age.
Yeah.
Yes. Fun. I feel like there's not, I don't know. It's having a like historical fiction, but it's a slightly less common historical period, you know? Yeah, especially for a supernatural sort of thing. I feel like there's a lot of that sort of like pseudo-Victorian supernatural kicking around, but like Jazz Age, not so common.
Jazz Age not in America? Wow.
Also true. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. I'm curious what the jazz, like I've never heard it, but what was the Jazz Age like in Canada? I have no idea. Do we do anything cool? Probably not, but I'm curious.
We probably just did what the Americans did, but slightly less wild.
Yeah. It's too cold.
Our parties aren't quite as intense. That's just my guess. Could be wrong.
You're probably right.
Okay, next one. This is a book by Daniel Jose Older, and he's quite well known for a YA series that he's done recently called Shadow Shaper. But since that one is so well known, I decided to go a little bit deeper into his backlist. This is a trilogy that all the books are out because it's a little older. It's got an amazing cover.
He looks like Pete Wentz.
He does. The man on the cover, you'll hear he's got a very exciting life, but apparently he also has time to flat iron his bangs.
Yeah. Yes. Either that or he's got very straight hair and doesn't wash very often because it is to his forehead.
It is. You know, so I will say, like, you know, the book cover is a little dated, maybe. Just a little dated. But don't hold that against it. It's still a great book. Okay, so here's what it's all about. It's called Half Resurrection Blues. Because I'm an in-betweener and the only one anyone knows of at that, the dead turn to me when something is askew between them and the living. Usually it's something mundane, like a suicide gone wrong, or someone revived that shouldn't have been. You know, something mundane like that.
Classic.
Okay. Carlos de la Cruz is one of the New York Council of the Dead's most unusual agents, an in-betweener, partially resurrected from a death that he barely recalls suffering after a life that's missing from his memory. He thinks he is one of a kind until he encounters other entities walking the fine line between life and death. One in-betweener is a sorcerer. He summoned a horde of imp-like Nyx.
Yep.
It's just NGK. That's the whole word. Capable of eliminating spirits, and they're spreading through the city like a plague. They've already taken out some of the NYCOD. That's the New York Council of Death, of course. We all know that. It's already taken out some of their finest, leaving Carlos desperate to stop their master before he opens up the entrada to the underworld, which would destroy the balance between the living and the dead. But in uncovering this man's identity, Carlos confronts the truth of his own life and death. ...
That sounds pretty good. Much better than the cover implies. Wasn't there a movie where they were like police of like...
Oh, sure. It's not the most unusual premise. There's multiple comic books like this.
It sounds good though.
It does. It's, if you like mysteries, like it's a detective mystery, right? You know, like that's the genre. Only it also happens to be your detective is an in-betweener.
Dead.
Instead of, you know, being a liaison with the police department, he's working with the Council of the Dead.
So yeah.
Yeah.
You like mysteries? Read that one.
Check that one out. Okay.
Okay, the next one is All of Us with Wings by Michelle Ruiz-Kale. This is a YA fantasy debut about love, found family, and healing, and is an ode to post-punk San Francisco through the eyes of a Mexican-American girl.
Goodness.
Yeah, just that description does not match the cover.
No, it does not. I will say the cover is very pretty. It does not look punk, post, or otherwise.
No. Looks very sweet.
It does look very sweet.
Okay. 17-year-old Xochitl is alone in San Francisco, running from her painful past, the mother who abandoned her, the man who betrayed her. Then one day she meets Palace, a precocious 12-year-old who lives with her rock star family and one of the city's storybook Victorians. Xochitl accepts a position as Palace's live-in governess and quickly finds her place in their household, which is relaxed and happy despite the band's larger-than-life fame. But on the night of the vernal equinox, as a concert after-party rages in the house below, Xochitl and Palace accidentally summon a pair of ancient creatures devoted to avenging the wrongs of Xochitl's adolescence. Oops. She would do anything to preserve her new life, but with the creatures determined to exact vengeance on those who've hurt her, no one is safe, not the family she's chosen, nor the one she's left behind.
Yeah. We talked about this last time, that I feel like it's unusual. So often they let these creatures loose and then they have an agenda. But this one, the creature's whole agenda is righting the wrongs of our main character's life, which is different. Usually their background or whatever wouldn't get centered the same way in that sort of story.
Yeah, like Gods of Jade. It's all about him.
Yeah. What does he want? That alluring god of death.
Oh, yeah.
We know what that means. Alluring god of death. Yeah. I mean, I do, once again, though, right? Accidentally. It reminds me of when my son throws something on the ground and then looks at you and is like, oops. And you have to say, it's not an oops when you threw it yourself. That's not an oops anymore when you did it.
Yeah, you did that. You did that.
You did that. So it's not an oops. That was on purpose.
It's also interesting that like they don't want to attack. Her new family isn't safe. Like, I wonder why. I mean, maybe they're up to something that we don't know about, but why would it?
Point.
Yeah, why would it go for her new family that she like loves and takes care of?
Yeah, if it's supposed to be the wrongs of her past.
Maybe
so yes,
unless it's past.
Maybe it's some wrongs that she doesn't know are going to happen.
That could be. Sounds good.
Yeah. So basically, the cover is not a very good match for what's happening in the book, in my opinion.
Agreed.
But either disregard that and listen to the description and pick it up, or look at the cover and be like, maybe it'll be this book, and read it anyway.
Yeah, definitely looks more contemporary than fantasy based by
it really
cover.
Does.
Yeah,
it really does. Yeah.
Okay, and before we get into our recs, I will just say the reason we chose to do this episode is because we've talked about several different books that are Latinx, paranormal, fantasy, sci-fi. So we want to throw them all in here as a shout out. Go check them out in our previous episodes. First one, Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, Nocturna by Maya Montaigne, We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Meja, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero, and Deep and Darkest Red, Wild Beauty, When the Moon Was Ours, Weight of Feathers, a whole bunch by Anna Marie McClemmer. Yeah,
so those are ones. One thing that we do when we are kind of like logging the books that we've talked about, we do have a Goodreads account where all of those titles are listed. So you can always browse through that if you're looking for other good stuff to read.
Yeah, add us as a friend.
Do that.
Okay, let's dive into our recs.
Okay.
When we recorded this previous episode, I had not read this book yet. I was just really pumped about it because I accidentally read Bruja Born. No, I started Bruja Born, which is the second in the series, and quickly realized I had the wrong book. but now I have the right one, and it's really good. So this is Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova. Here's the description. I was chosen by the Dios. Even gods make mistakes. Alex is a bruja, the most powerful witch in a generation, and she hates magic. At her death day celebration, Alex performs a spell to rid herself of her power, but it backfires. Her whole family vanishes into thin air, leaving her alone with Nova, a brujo she can't trust, but who may be Alex's only chance at saving her family. So, very good. I
Big
haven't
setup.
Right? I think I have like 70 to 50 pages left.
Mm-hmm.
And this honestly doesn't give as much as you would think. Basically when she's like one of the most powerful brujas of all time. She's an enchantrix, and she's like, no, I'm cursed. Don't want this. Someone take this away. And then accidentally sends her family into the tree of creation, tree of life.
Hate it when that happens.
Right? But it's in like Los Lagos, which is like this other realm or world. And so she and Nova go in there, and they have to like go through the different areas of the place. So it's very like Alice in Wonderland-esque, where each area has a different like theme. Loosely.
Okay. Yeah.
It's very good. And I cannot confirm or deny, but her best friend, who's named Rishi, I think there might be a little budding romance there, because I thought it would have been with Nova, but
no.
So far, it seems like it could be Rishi. So follow along as I find out. Yeah, it's very good. I liked it.
Good. And there's a whole sequel to, find out even more about.
I think it's 3. I think there's going to be 3
okay.
books. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that's Nicole's. My pick is a book called Trinity Site by Jennifer Givon. And, okay. This is the description. Our people are survivors. Calliope's great-grandmother once told her of their Puebloan roots. Could Bisabuela's ancient myths be true? Anthropologist Calliope Santiago awakens to find herself in a strange and sinister wasteland, a shadow of the New Mexico she knew. Empty vehicles litter the road. Everyone has disappeared, or almost everyone. Calliope, heavy-bellied with the twins she carries inside her, must make her way across this dangerous landscape with a group of fellow survivors, confronting violent inhabitants in search of answers. Long-dead volcanoes erupt, the ground rattles and splits, and monsters come to ominous life. The impossible suddenly real, Calliope will be forced to reconcile the geological record with the heritage she once denied if she wants to survive and deliver her unborn babies into this uncertain new world. Rooted in Indigenous oral history traditions and contemporary apocalypse fiction, Trinity Site asks readers to consider science versus faith and personal identity versus ancestral connection. Lyrically written and utterly original, Trinity Site brings readers to the precipice of the end of times and the hope for redemption.
Wow. What a description.
It is. It's a lot. So one thing that, now this is maybe the third time Nicole and I have talked about this in regards to this book, is that in a way it almost feels like calling this paranormal seems not really appropriate, because it is very much based in religious beliefs. But then at the same time, right, there's books out there, lots of books out there with angels and demons and stuff, and those are religious figures technically, right? And we still call those paranormal, supernatural, or whatever. But that's just something to keep in mind, that it is very much based on like real, actual beliefs and legends of different indigenous communities in New Mexico, in that area. It was a different sort of character. The main character is there. She was a little bit frustrating, because the whole thing about how she's an anthropologist, everything, like all these wild things are happening, and here she is being like, well, but that's not how it would happen. If, you know, if the volcano exploded, the ash would remain in the air for months. And it's like, the other characters are like, yes. And clearly that didn't happen. So something's going on here. And she's like, well, but it should have happened. And like, she just like refuses to acknowledge the fact that she's in a world where the regular rules don't apply.
Yeah.
Like way past the time when she should have just caught on, probably. So that's a little bit frustrating. That she keeps kind of denying, and then she kind of like comes to belief, and then she'll be like, maybe that didn't happen. It's like, no, okay, just get on board, because it'll be more fun for everyone. Yes. I would say that this book, although it is very interesting, just a bit of a trigger warning that there is a fair bit of violence. Like those monsters that are described they're real monstrous. Not just like, they're a little scary. Like, no, they will mess you up. So if you don't like that kind of violence in your books, then maybe avoid. Also, if if the idea of being pregnant and in the apocalypse makes you a little uneasy.
That's a fear of mine. I mean, the apocalypse in general, and then like having something that needs a doctor, like having braces on. No thanks.
Yes. So, so then, maybe don't pick this for that one. But, if you've read like a ton of apocalypse books, and I know there's many people out there who have, then this is a bit of it is definitely a different look at many of the same kind of tropes that come up over and over again. So I would say check this one out for something different.
Mm-hmm. We should have called this episode Latinx Supernatural Fantasy.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Okay.
Well, now we know.
On that note, maybe I'll just put that as the title, and then we'll just leave it at the beginning of the episode. We'll find out. On that note, that wraps up this week's episode. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe us on all social media at TBAPL. You can find the podcast on any podcast platform. Make sure you rate us because it helps people find the show. You can email us at tbpl.ca. And I cannot remember what and of course show notes, because it's hard to find titles and author names. You can find our show notes, tbplofftheshelf.com. And that's it.
That's it. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.